Hello and welcome to CrimeTak International True Crime Series show. Let's dive into today's story. In the tumultuous 1960s, the world found itself perched precariously on the edge of a global catastrophe. Emerging from the ashes of World War, i.e., a planet was divided into two formidable camps. One led by the United States, the other by the Soviet Union, which is now known as Russia. This era, known as the Cold War, was characterized by intense geopolitical rivalry, espionage, and the constant specter of nuclear conflict. What makes this period truly remarkable is that the world came perilously close to nuclear war on multiple occasions, with some of the most unexpected events almost triggering the unthinkable. The stage was set with two superpowers locked in a tense and ideological standoff. The United States, the dominant superpower, cast a watchful eye on Fidel Castro's Cuba, which had recently undergone a transformation into the first communist state in the Western Hemisphere. What added a layer of complexity to this already intricate global political landscape was Cuba's close alliance with the Soviet Union. At the heart of this Cold War standoff was the race to amass and deploy nuclear weapons. The United States possessed a significant advantage in terms of nuclear firepower, while the Soviet Union struggled to find a means to deliver its long-range missiles to American soil. This power imbalance left the USSR in a perpetual state of unease, as they feared that the United States might initiate a preemptive strike, rendering their long-range missiles effectively useless. The stakes were staggeringly high. The world watched in anxious anticipation as these superpowers engaged in a precarious dance, with every move they made having the potential to plunge the planet into nuclear war. It was against this backdrop that Operation Cactus, a mission that would test India's mettle on the world stage, unfolded. Meanwhile, the small island nation of Cuba, strategically located just 90 miles from the coast of the United States, emerged as a flashpoint of global tensions. The Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962 was the pivotal moment. American intelligence agencies had been diligently monitoring the situation, aware of the Soviet Union's support for Cuba. However, they were caught off guard when they discovered the presence of Soviet ballistic missiles on Cuban soil. This revelation was a jarring wake-up call for the United States, as the world teetered on the brink of a third world war. President John F. Kennedy, facing one of the most critical decisions in human history, was initially advised to launch a military strike to destroy the missile sites in Cuba. However, he recognized that such a move could have catastrophic consequences, potentially escalating into a full-scale nuclear war. After 6 days of intense deliberation, he decided against a direct military strike. Instead, he implemented a naval blockade, or a quarantine, monitoring all ships bound for Cuba. This marked a pivotal moment in the crisis, demonstrating Kennedy's commitment to finding a peaceful resolution while preventing the escalation of nuclear conflict. However, the tension escalated even further when, on October 25, 1962, an alarm rang out at the DuluthAirDefenseCenter. This highly secure American military installation was suddenly breached, triggering a state of panic and alarm. The message was clear. Pilots armed with nuclear weapons needed to be ready to take off and strike their target at a moment's notice. The world held its breath as this incident illustrated just how close the world was to nuclear war. The situation at the DuluthAirDefenseCenter mirrored the broader global tension, where any alert or alarm had the potential to ignite a nuclear conflict. In an ironic twist, it was an intrusion by a bear, unintentional but nonetheless alarming, that further exacerbated the heightened state of alert. As the crisis continued to unfold, the United States intensified its surveillance of Cuba's coastal borders, inspecting every ship destined for the island. The Soviet Union viewed this as a provocative act, further straining relations between the superpowers. On October 27, 1962, a Soviet ship targeted an American vessel, prompting the U.S. to retaliate. This confrontation further amplified the Cold War tension. In a desperate bid to bolster their strategic position, the Soviet Union dispatched 4 submarines, known as lethal Russian submarines, to reach Cuba by any means necessary. The UC was vigilant and detected Soviet submarines' approach. The crisis escalated as the US issued a stern warning to the submarines, ordering them to submarines or face destruction. Amid this high-stakes standoff, one crucial aspect of the Cold War came into play: the 3-0 rule governing the launch of nuclear missiles. Each submarine carried 3 commanding officers, all of whom had to unanimously agree to launch nuclear weapons. As tensions reached a breaking point, 2 of the captains were ready to initiate a missile launch. Then entered Vasily Arkhipov, the 3rd captain whose decisive vote would determine the world's fate. Arkhipov chose not to launch the missile, insisting on concrete evidence that a full-scale war had indeed begun. His commitment to verification over assumption proved to be the pivotal moment that may have averted a global catastrophe. Ultimately, the Cuban Missile Crisis, also known as the 13-day Cuba Crisis, was resolved through a compromise. The Soviet Union agreed to remove its missiles from Cuba, and the United States pledged not to attack Cuba. In a lesser-known aspect of the agreement, the US also agreed to remove its missiles from Italy, Turkey, and other locations that could easily target the Soviet Union. The Cuban Missile Crisis serves as a chilling reminder of the precariousness of international relations and the dire consequences that could have arisen from a single wrong move during the Cold War. However, the specter of nuclear annihilation did not end with the Cuban Missile Crisis. In 1995, the world once again teetered on the brink of a nuclear crisis. Russia's president, Boris Yeltsin, faced a harrowing moment when rockets were detected coming from Norway's sea territory, seemingly heading straight for Russia. The alarms blared, and the command room was in disarray. Yeltsin was informed of the potential threat, and the decision to retaliate loomed ominously. Yet, in a surprising turn of events, the trajectory of the rockets changed, and the crisis was averted. It was later revealed that the threat was not an attack, but a scientific experiment by Russia. Yeltsin's decision not to retaliate, based on a careful assessment of the situation, prevented what could have been another catastrophic misunderstanding. These incidents serve as stark reminders of the thin line between peace and global catastrophe, a line that often hinges on split second decisions and the willingness to prioritize dialogue and verification over rash action. Throughout history, nuclear weapons have cast a menacing shadow over humanity. From the Chernobyl disaster to potential attacks on nuclear power plants, the threat is ever present. Today, over 13,000 atomic bombs exist worldwide, a constant reminder of the danger that persists. The possession of nuclear weapons drastically alters the power dynamics between nations. It can deter aggression, as demonstrated by the Russia-Ukraine example. Nations armed with nuclear weapons have the capacity to inflict unimaginable destruction, a reality that keeps conflicts in check. However, in a world where several nations possess these deadly weapons, the threat endures. Until nuclear disarmament becomes a reality, the world will continue to live under the ominous shadow of potential nuclear catastrophe. The stories of the Cuban Missile Crisis, the submarine incident, and Boris Yeltsin's harrowing moment underscore the urgent need for diplomacy, cooperation, and communication in an age where the stakes are nothing less than the survival of humanity. These historical episodes serve as chilling reminders of the devastating power of nuclear weapons and the eternal responsibility of leaders to safeguard the world from the abyss of global conflict.